So week of prayer. So I have to ask one question is, was it 24/7 prayer or over the weekend? Wow. If my recommendation, when my church does the 24/7 prayer, my recommendation is always sign up for the 1 to 3 o'clock in the morning slot or the 2 and the 4 o'clock slot, because it's in that time when your brain is exhausted and you stop thinking those thousands of things that run through your brain throughout the day. You're just tired. And that is when God starts speaking to you. When in that quiet of the night is when you start. And a few years ago, I was very lucky, I was very privileged to go on a pilgrimage to a place in Greece called Mount Athos. I don't know if anyone's ever heard of Mount Athos. It's a peninsula about the size of Wales, and there's no roads, there's no electricity, you can't go in, you can't go out. You need a special visa to go in, and it's basically 27 monasteries with about 1,000 monks in each monastery, and you pray a lot. And it takes about 3 days for you to quieten your mind. All the things that go off in your mind, I would compare to having 100 radios in the room, all simultaneously different radio stations. And you can't hear what any one of them is saying. And as you quieten your mind, you turn off each radio until only one is left, which is God's voice. And what people hear in that quiet of the night is different. It's unique for every single person. And what I heard after about 3 days is God saying to me, I miss you. That was it, just 3 words, I miss you. Because God craves to be in relationship with you. He wants that more than anything. He just wants to be close to you. And I think about the relationship I have with my children. My children are all grown up now, they're 30, 28, 22. I know I don't look old enough, but anyway. Started young. And I know that I crave for a relationship with them. They've all moved out. I made sure of that. And so, but I really miss them. And I crave for that phone call, that conversation, that meeting up in the weekend. I just crave to hear their voice. And in the same way, God craves to hear your voice. So that prayer time is so, so special. I'll repeat what Helen said, which is, we need more of it. And it is so special. My thanks to Matt, to Sean, for organising this talk. I know you supported Tearfund in the past, and it's a privilege for me to be here today. Not just because the Ford dealer is next door, but it's a privilege to be here to thank you for all that you've helped achieve over the years. Tearfund isn't some sort of organisation that just does everything on its own. We can only do what we do because of you. And so it's a huge privilege to be able to come and say thank you in person for all that is being done around the world because of you. And so I'd like to reflect some of that today. And I'd like to start with a Bible reading. It's always a good place to start. Now, when I went to this pilgrimage, one of the monks there said that there are certain verses in the Bible, when you read them, it will take you your whole life to understand that one verse. That's the depth of our Bible. The spiritual depth in the Bible, God's word, is that you can read a verse and it will take you your whole life to understand that one verse. And there are 2 verses that really challenge me, and I'll tell you the other one later. But the first one I'm going to start with is Philippians 2, 2-8. Is that up? Yeah. And it reads, then make my joy complete by being like-minded, having the same love, being one in spirit and in one mind. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves. Not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interest of others. In your relationship with one another, have the same mindset as Christ Jesus, who, being the very nature of God, did not consider equality with God something to be used for his own advantage. Rather, he made himself nothing by taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness, and being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even death on a cross. It's a really powerful verse. And when we think about have the same mindset as Christ, Wow. Like, where do you even begin to have the same mindset as Christ? How does this, this was in Philippians, and I'm going to start because I'm going to make this interactive because I know it's been a long week, there's been a lot of prayer, so I'm going to ask you lots of questions. This isn't just me preaching, I'm going to make this interactive. So the first question I'm going to ask you is, where is Philippi? Any suggestions? Throw out any suggestions. Where is Philippi? Turkey? Turkey? Greece? Turkey? Any other ideas? Greece? Macedonia? Matt, where is?
Turkey, Greece, Macedonia.
Oh, gotcha. In the Middle East. Yeah, it's. Let's have a look where it is. I'll put you out of your misery. It's there. It's in northeast Greece. You did, in fairness, you did say. It's one of the first communities that Paul started. It was a Roman colony at the time, and as such, Paul and anyone who followed his teachings suffered significant persecution. Paul wrote this letter whilst in prison, and it's a collection of a series of letters that he wrote, as we know. In particular, it fascinated me because it's one of those verses that really challenges us. In it, we're told, like I said, to have the same mindset as Christ. And so, when we think what that entails, what does that mean? I'm going to ask you what kind of characteristics what comes to mind when you think of Christ. So if we're to mirror Christ, what kind of characteristics come to mind when you think of Christ? So again, call out. Characteristics to Christ. Humble, loving, compassionate, patient. Any others? Obedient. Did you say obedient? Any others? Gentle, gracious. Any? Selfless. Justice, absolutely. Lover of justice. There aren't really enough words to describe Christ. I know when I asked you that question, you all thought, where do I start? That's the sort of first thing that pops into your mind. One key word that stands out when we think of Christ is sacrificial. Mother Teresa, and I'll move on to the next slide if I forget. Are you all familiar with Mother Teresa? When she won her Nobel Peace Prize in 1979, it's a talk, by the way, it's on YouTube. It's 19 minutes long, her speech when she won the Nobel Peace Prize. And I highly recommend it. It's one of the most impactful talks I've ever heard. In it, in that talk, she said, for love to be true, it has to hurt. She didn't say it could hurt. She didn't say it might hurt. She didn't say it will hurt sometimes, and other times it'd be really joyful. She said, for love to be true, it has to hurt. And that statement really puzzled me when I first heard it. It's not the idea of love that we've been weaned on in the West. Love is a joyful thing. It's a romantic thing. It's a thing that's filled with excitement and happiness. So it challenged me. And then I had my first child, my first of 3 children. And the first moment you hold your child for the first time, you know exactly what she meant. There's nothing we wouldn't do for our children. And when we speak about sacrificial love, there cannot be a better example than that of Christ, who, although he was the form of God and was God incarnate, and all that means in terms of power and authority, he became human, and as a human, he lived humbly and simply as a servant. And what we would recognize today, I would say, as poverty. Jesus, our God incarnate, gave so much to be with us. His ministry here on earth, we witness time and time again his sacrificial love, his generosity with those who were ill and broken, like the couple with physical mental illness that he healed. His time, giving generously of his time, his love. and always pouring himself out for others. And finally, as we know, and I've just finished the story, have you all seen The Chosen? I've just finished it. And finally, the story culminates with what we see God poured out on the cross, choosing to suffer the pain of what preceded the crucifixion and the crucifixion itself for the atonement of our sin. When in the Garden of Gethsemane, he clearly said that he could ask his Father and he would have 12 legions of angels at his disposal. So we are told to mirror that kind of love, that kind of sacrificial love. So if I go back to that verse, do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit, rather in humility value others above yourself, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interest of others. In your relationships with one another, have the same mindset as Christ. So let me ask you a question. Do we have enough stuff? Do we have enough clothes, enough gadgets, enough food? And how much is enough? Instinctively, you will answer that question as yes. I'm sure we have enough. But if we can consider for a moment, you don't have to go too far back in your memory to remember the panic buy of 2020. The COVID-19 pandemic struck the news and we hit the shops for toilet roll. Shelves empty. Toilet roll. But why? What caused that panic? Was it that there wasn't enough toilet roll? There was more than enough toilet roll. So what caused the panic? Any ideas? What caused that panic? Fear. Fear of not having enough. In April of 2020, there was an article in the Guardian newspaper, and it said, what is generally called panic buying, a common human response to a crisis, is not caused by shortages. There was no shortage of loo roll. It's caused by fear. At its root is a fear of scarcity, that the fear that is self-fulfilling, because the more people anxiously stockpile, the more people get infected by that fear that it's going to run out. And so the more they buy. I remember reading one lady returned after the pandemic. I remember one lady returning £500 worth of loo roll, and I just thought, where on earth do you fit that? But, the panic buy, which caused the shortages of loo roll, pasta, hand sanitizer, and other necessities that we need, is a mindset of scarcity. A mindset which dictates that I need to get all I can today because there may not be enough to go around tomorrow. A mindset which can only be acted on by the wealthy or the relatively wealthy. There's many people around the world who don't have a choice. And what's interesting about this mindset is that it's contagious and it's self-fulfilling. At Tearfund, we believe in a theology of abundance. It's not a theology of excess, but instead it teaches us that God has already provided for everything that we need. We actually produce enough food for 9 billion people in the world, and yet there's only about 8.6 billion people. So the question is, why is there hunger? We all know, whether from personal experience or stories that we hear, that abundant wealth rarely leads to happiness and contentment. So why do we spend our lives working for something which is likely to disappoint us and deter us from what God really wants in our lives? As a local church, when a local church takes on the same mindset as Christ, which it exists to represent, it's key to accomplishing God's purpose for its creation. And Tearfund is passionate about the local church. I'm here this morning to help you understand the power of the local church to change lives and transform communities. So I'm going to start by asking you some more questions, and then we'll ask Matt what he thinks. Sorry, Matt. I know it's been a long week. Okay, quick quiz. How many Christians do you estimate there are in the world? 500 million, the three options. I'm not that mean. I'm not going to ask for an exact number. I'm going to give you three options. 500 million, 1 billion, or 2 billion, or over 2 billion. What do we think? 2.4 billion Christians in the world. Take a moment to think what that means. 2.4 billion Christians in the world. A third of the world's population, or just under a third of the world's population. Second question, how many Christians of that 2.4 billion regularly attend church? Which means, according to the Pew reference, how many Christians regularly attend church, which means at least once a month? Do we think it's 100 million of that 2.4 billion around the world, 500 million, or a billion? A billion? What do we think, Matt? Half a billion, that 500 million. The answer is actually a billion. There's a billion Christians who attend church at least once a month. Pew Research Center shows 53 countries, 53% of Christian women and 46% of Christian men say they attend services at least once a month. And the final question is, how many churches are there around the world? Are there 1.5 million, 3 million, or 4 million? Matt, how many churches are there in the world? Would you estimate? So is that a trick question? Am I throwing you on the last, or do you think it's 4 million? 4 million? There are actually over 4 million churches in the world. So consider for a moment the power of us uniting as Christians. Instead of being divided into denominations and dividing ourselves into different kind of tribes, imagine the power of all of us coming together, 2.4 billion people across 4 million churches, all coming together to help one another. That's the sort of thing that keeps me up at night. It's extremely powerful, and there are Christians in every country around the world. And what we'd love to do at Tearfund is bring those Christians together. So we work in over 50 countries, 50 of the poorest countries in the world. And one of those countries is Burundi. And we're going to watch a video shortly of a lady from Burundi. And I didn't know. So next quiz question is, what do we think is the poorest country in the world? Where do we think is the poorest country in the world? Haiti? Haiti was my guess, actually. Any ideas? Sorry? Andorra? Any others? Where? Burundi? Any others? Malawi. I've been to Malawi, actually, and Malawi is stunningly beautiful. And it has the biggest lake in Africa. I didn't know that. Any other suggestions? Oh, one more. Mozambique. Burkina Faso and Vanuatu. The poorest country in the world, and this really surprised me because people have guessed South Sudan or Haiti. Haiti's in really, please pray for Haiti. It's in really big trouble at the moment. The poorest country in the world, which really surprised me, is actually Burundi. I was really surprised. Since 2006, we've seen 47 million lives having been transformed through Tearfund's community projects. Remember, we don't take pride in this at Tearfund. This is all because of you. So because of you, we've seen 47 million lives being transformed through the community projects, like the one you're about to see. And a new report that we just released, where we questioned 8,000 people in those communities in Burundi and Malawi and Uganda, in 4 African countries, revealed that people who participated in those projects, 35% were hopeful about their future and what happens when the church acts like Christ. So we'll see the videos very shortly. But before we do, we mentioned that God provides more than we need. So why is there hunger? Why is there poverty in the world when there's more than enough wealth, more than enough food for everyone in the world? Something really important to us in Tearfund, and I'm not sure if the click is working, but I'm using the power of prayer. Oh, is it? Do I need to slide it up? Oh, that's why. So, Katie, were you doing this all along? Oh, bless you. The whole time you saw me struggling, you thought, I'm just going to press the button for. That's so kind. That's so kind. This is what happens when you give technology to a 53-year-old. Okay. So let me see if that works now. Is it not working? Wait. Did you slide it up? It worked temporarily. I saw a green light come on. Let me see if that works. Okay, can we go to the next slide? And the next slide? Perfect. So, important to us at Tearfund, and the motivation behind what we do is the theology of poverty. Why is there poverty in the world? We understand that poverty is the consequence of 4 broken relationships, and this is really important to understand what's happening all around the world. A broken relationship between God and myself, between myself and others, between myself and creation, and finally, between me and myself. We see that, especially in the UK, we see this pandemic of mental illness happening at the moment where people really don't love themselves much anymore. Poverty is a result of these 4 broken relationships and something that we all face. Sometimes poverty is in the form of material poverty, which is, when I say the word poverty, that's the first thing that comes to your mind, such as the lack of money or food. But it also comes as spiritual poverty, our broken relationships with ourselves and with others that lead us to labeling others poor, but not looking at us in the same light. Some of us may have plenty of money, and some of us may face spiritual poverty that eats away at our happiness, our peace, and our significance. A poverty that only Jesus can lift us out of. We prayed earlier, actually, about some people who were going through some difficulty in a local prison. And I just, in my prayer, in my head, in that room at that moment, I was thinking how different my life would have been had I not had Jesus in my life. And I don't know why people choose not to have Jesus and suffer in solitude. And I prayed that I would be able to speak about Jesus in a more confident way to those people. I would love for them to enjoy the peace and the love that I feel every day. Others may be confronted with a spiritual material poverty, which not only impacts their happiness and the peace, but destroys their ability to have hope. When hope disappears is when despair enters. Through the church and community transformation, we're helping people in extreme poverty to realize that they're not without hope, that they have purpose, they have significance, they have skills and resources. Tearfund doesn't actually give anything. Tearfund only gives hope in the Bible, which comes from the Bible. We don't actually give money. We don't actually give resources. We simply release people's potential, and we empower them to make the difference in the community. So through the 2 videos I'm going to show you, one is before Tearfund worked in the community, and one is after. So without further ado, let's go on to...
Hi, my name's Glenn, and I recently had the privilege of going to Burundi to see the work that Tearfund is doing with local churches there. On our first day, we took a trip into the mountains to visit a village called Mubira. It's only 20 kilometres from where we were staying, but it took us over an hour to get there because the road was so rough and bumpy. When we arrived, the whole community was there to welcome us, and we were greeted by Pastor Obed. He described to us what life was like in the community before and the various challenges they faced. Tearfund's Bible study training changed all that. The church members started to realise that everything God had already given them could then be used to help the whole community. The main challenge that Mubira faced was the lack of access to healthcare. The nearest health centre is 11 kilometres away down that bumpy road that I described at the beginning. Can you imagine having a medical emergency or being pregnant, being in labour and having to sit on the back of a motorbike going down a road like that? The church was inspired by one part of the Bible studies that Tearfund uses as part of the training. Nehemiah 2, verses 10 to 20, when Nehemiah decides to rebuild the walls of Jerusalem. They realized that when they come together as a community, as a church, that they could pool their resources. They raised £30,000 to be able to build their own community health centre right there in the middle of Mabira. When I was there, they just finished building the health centre and had piped water up from the other side of the mountains so that it had running water. And I've heard that 6 months on, they're planning to put solar panels on the roof to provide electricity. Pastor Obed's church has doubled in size and he has to build a new one. In fact, they're having to plant new churches in that area because people are coming to faith. They showed us with pride their community health centre that they had built with their own hands. Mabira is just one example of how Tearfund is equipping churches to transform their communities. We simply couldn't do it without the support of churches like yours. We're so grateful for all of your support and prayers. Thank you.
Great, thank you. As the video shows, Tearfund does not do the work on behalf of the community. It simply provides training for the church leaders on how to run the Church and Community Transformation Bible studies. The church then runs those studies for everyone in the community who wishes to attend. As the groups meet and they study the Bible together, individuals discover their purpose, their significance, their skills and their resources. As it says in Psalms, God wove those skills into you in your mother's womb. We all have them. The challenge is to uncover them. What are those skills that God gave you specifically? And when we do, there's a real power that comes with that. And so I'm going to move on to our second reading, which is in Corinthians, 2 Corinthians 8, which is, now finish the work, so that your eager willingness to do it may be matched by your completion of it, according to your means. For if the willingness is there, the gift is acceptable according to what one has and not according to what one does not have. Our desire is not that others might be relieved while you are hard-pressed, but that there may be equality. At the present time, your plenty will supply what they need, so that in turn their plenty will supply what you need. The goal is equality. As it is written, the one who gathered much did not have too much, and the one who gathered little did not have too little. You may all remember in that community the challenges that they faced. Traveling miles on the back of a moped when you're in labor to reach the nearest clinic. And our challenge is to empower those communities, to release their potential so they can do the work, not that we can do the work for them. That only encourages more dependency. So what I'd like to do shortly is show you another video which shows the difference in that community. So can we show the second video? Just, I'm conscious of time as well.
This is Burundi.
This is the same community.
And this is Cecile, who is walking to fetch water for her family.
Oh, yeah, Steve.
Can we pause the video a second?
Then what's in the bucket?
So I'm conscious that it was really important that we get the authentic voice in this video. What it does mean is that we've got subtitles, and I'm conscious that not everyone might be able to read the subtitles. Should I attempt to read the subtitles as they play, or should I leave you to read the subtitles? Okay, so if we can, is it possible to restart the video? Thank you.
This is Burundi in Africa. And this is Cecile, who's walking to fetch water for her family.
Oh, yeah, Steve.
Oh, okay. Well, then what's in the bucket? This is the school that your donations built, brick by... Then who built it? Of course. Your generous donation. This is the centre of the community that your donations... No, look, it's not, is it? Okay, what did Tearfund do?
biciye mu ishengero Tearfund yarafashije guhugura Pues,
Oh, well, that's much more helpful.
niweza kuyamaza kubitahura?
This
Thank you. So in the video, we were able to see that this community in Burundi was able to raise over £30,000 on their own. I can go into a lot more detail. Please come and see me after the talk if you want to know exactly how they did it. But they raised £30,000 to build their own health centre, and you saw the health centre in that video. So in the first video you saw before, and then you saw it complete in that video. And they were able to pipe water from the bottom of the hill to the top of the hill, which is a real engineering kind of marvel. And they did that all on their own. So that the health centre now had running water. Because of the inspiration of the project came from experiencing the church and community transformation Bible studies. The result was the church grew, requiring, as you heard in the video, a bigger building. This is why Tearfund is so passionate about working through the local church, because they have local solutions to local problems, which is unique to every single community around the world. Meeting Jesus is only the beginning of the journey. A local church provides the community we all need to make the most of that journey, personally and communally. So I'm hoping at this point it's clear what in the Tearfund transformation program, how it works. Cecile, we have a picture of Cecile. I think it might be the next slide or 2 slides ahead. Lives in that community, and you saw her at the very beginning carrying the bucket. She's gone through the Bible study program, and her husband are farmers, and this training opened her eyes to the opportunities around them. Cecile's story helps to illustrate how poverty is often about perspective and what you believe to be true rather than the reality of what is true. And when you change your perspective, as it says in Romans 12, we change our perspective to that God's perspective. We renew our minds. Because what we think reveals what we believe to be true. So if we change what we think, we change what we do. What I hope you found refreshing about the film is that we're not just focusing on the needs around the world. Instead, we're focusing on what God is doing through the local church and the impact that's having. Cecile, featured in the video, experienced what change can happen when you change the way you think. We genuinely believe that God has shown us a remarkable way to transform lives of countless millions of people around the world, the church. Tearfund is currently partnering with 25,000 churches in 50 countries, but our vision is to see us partnering with 250,000 churches over the next 7 years. And in fact, since this has been written, this talk was produced 9 months ago, we're now up to 39,000 churches. It's a blessing, not of our doing. It's a real blessing, and the power of prayer. Our prayer here at Tearfund is that the UK church will have the same mindset of abundance. We know it can be difficult at times, but we know that we serve a big and generous God. And my request to you is not to consider the amount, but consider the way in which you give it. Give it prayerfully, give it from the heart, and the amount honestly doesn't matter. If you give whatever you feel led to give, God will bless and multiply that. What we are seeing is that God is doing what he always does. When we give sacrificially to him, he blesses and multiplies the gift. If we think about the feeding of the 5,000, Jesus didn't just feed the crowd out of nothing. In fact, it was one of those really powerful parables that appeared in all 4 Gospels. But it's not until the last Gospel, John, that we see that Christ asked for something to be given sacrificially. And we saw the child give of his lunch, his food, that Jesus then blessed and multiplied. Every £1 invested by Tearfund into local churches helps the community to unlock £7 in time and resources, which is basically the community coming together, which otherwise would cost £7 to bring them all together and to do that work. And in return, that releases £211 of value in the sense of the medical centre and all that it produces. Just £1. And I think we often forget that we live in the country with the most powerful currency in the world. £1 here means so much more whenever you take it abroad. So actually, it's a real blessing every time anyone gives in the UK. £6 a month could help deliver CCT training like what you saw in the video to a community somewhere around the world. £12 to communities and £25 to train 10 local church members to run a community transformation program every single year in a different community. So I'd like to invite you to partner with us. And if you feel you're in a position to give £12 a month, there are leaflets on some of the seats, which are spaced around the congregation. And there are pens, I believe, on the table, just there. But there are many ways that we can help. It isn't just about financial giving. And so I'll go through these very, very quickly. And I will just say beforehand, yesterday, my son did the first marathon he's ever done, ever. And my friend, my partner knows, I make excuses for not doing things. And so I'm 53, I'm not fit. You can see I'm not fit. I can't do a marathon. And then God works in beautiful, mysterious ways, doesn't he? So at the end, my partner says, let's go talk to that man who just finished the marathon. Thank you so much for doing that. And so this man, we asked him, how many marathons do you do? And he said, this is my 59th marathon. Great. And how did you start? He said, well, how old are you? And I said, I'm 53. He said, I started when I was 53. I'd never run in my life. I used to smoke 40 cigarettes a day and I was 18 stone. Now, this year, he's aiming to do 41 marathons this year. So I have no excuse. He really challenged me to start running. And in many ways, we all feel there are reasons we can't help, we can't do things. But I'm going to go through just some of the ways that you can help. So one is volunteering. Every charity, not just Tearfund, but every charity is always crying out for volunteers. And having traveled extensively throughout Europe, one of the things which is beautifully British is our volunteering. I don't see it in other European countries the way I see it here. It's a beautiful aspect of our culture. Another is to take action, to be the voice of those whose voices we will never hear, and advocate on their behalf. And so I've just written to my local MP to talk about poverty around the world. And we've seen the DFID budget greatly reduce over the years. So speaking out and saying, actually, this isn't okay. And actually, we need, as a nation that's benefited from, historically, from other countries, we need to be able to help people in those countries. Another way is legacy. Again, people don't often consider, but leaving a legacy to a charity. I used to work for the Royal National Institute of the Blind many, many years ago, and 30% of their income was based on legacies. It makes a huge difference to consider any charity in your will. And then finally, and most powerfully, prayer. Pray for those countries around the world that are going through difficulty. We have some sample Tear Time magazines that also have prayer diaries. And every 3 months, you will receive a prayer diary that will focus your prayer to countries around the world that you wouldn't even consider, some of which we heard called out earlier when I asked you what was the poorest country in the world. And it will focus your prayer onto those countries and asking the Lord to intervene and help with some of the struggles in those countries. And finally, there is one more, which is fundraising. And people forget about the power of fundraising. So yesterday, my son ran, not for Tearfund, which I did remind him, but He ran for another great charity, which was Alzheimer's UK, which is another fantastic charity. And he ran it for his grandmother, my mother, who is suffering with Alzheimer's. And so fundraising is a great way to be able to help as well. So if any of those are suitable, right for you, I would ask for you to pray over that and really ask God if any of those are right for you today. And if they are, please come and speak to me or give Tearfund a call. But I'd like to close us now in prayer, if I may. So if we can bow our heads for just 1 second, and I will close us in prayer. Generous and loving Father, you have made the world and filled it with all that we need. We thank you for all that we have been blessed with, for the unconditional love you have shown us through your Son, our Lord Jesus Christ, and for the life-giving Bible. We thank you for always loving us, always guiding us, even when we may not have known you were. You are truly almighty, and yet you love us unconditionally. Despite our sins and your loving ways always guide us near you. Touch my heart, Lord, so I can feel compassion for others, and I may love them as you have loved us. Break it 1,000 times, Lord, rather than harder ones, and bless us with tears to shed for those who suffer from pain, from the pain of rejection or starvation or war, so we may reach out our hands with so much we have to comfort them and turn their pain into joy. Touch my mind, Lord, so I have the wisdom to see your guiding love and give thanks for all that we have been given. And give me courage, Lord, to always do what is right, what is your will and not mine. Our lives are yours. Guide us and teach us to be ever grateful for those gifts and to use them in service of you, Lord. Amen.